Scott County, providing safe, healthy, and livable communities.
Now we will move on to item 8 on our agenda, which is a Scott County Delivers topic, and the topic today is early learning and literacy. Chris Harder, please get us started. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. You are all very aware that we have spent a lot of time talking about education over the last 6 months, perhaps most notably in a project with Shakopee School District to support early childhood screenings and consistent attendance as strategies for improving overall educational outcomes. So this morning, we have a group of folks that you don't typically see in the course of those conversations. Many of these are new faces and new voices for you. And our focus today is really on how to make sure that children and families have access to the resources they need to support education, and also how do we align those resources so that we're using our investments most productively and having the biggest impact on the kids and families in our county. I think it's important as we talk to remember that there is a network of services that all support early learning and early literacy, and we have some great representatives today. I think it's also important to remember that ultimately what we hope is that this contributes to long-term success educationally, socially, from an employment standpoint, and also that we remember that success in schools is linked to some of that important connections to caring adults, teachers, coaches, other school staff, that kids have access to when they get into school and have opportunity to engage with education professionals. So all of that speaks to the wealth of impact this group has on kids and families going forward. So with that, what I'd like to do is have the folks on my side of the table introduce themselves. And then, Nikki, if you would start, we'll have the folks on the panel introduce themselves and where they, what their role is in the educational system. And then we'll get started.
Good morning. My name is Vanessa Strong. I'm the Water Resources Supervisor for Scott County.
Danny Lenz, Office of Management and Budget.
Cindy Geist, Community Services.
I'm Nikki Hallberg, Community Prevention Response Supervisor, and I help oversee the St. David's work with our Educational Neglect Prevention and Diversion Program.
Hi, I'm Mary Bartuszek. I am from New Prague Area School District. I'm the supervisor for the early learning programs.
I'm Lauren Spranger. I am a member of the Library Advisory Board, a former member of the PAC with the FRCs, and a parent in Scott County.
Allie Addison. I work for Scott County Libraries in Learning and Outreach.
And Terry Furman. I'm a public health nurse with the family health teams.
And I'm Mary Kay Stevens with Scott County Public Health Supervisor in the family health areas. Ready?
All right. So don't mean to start off with a downer of a question, but so just looking, it's very early in the packet on page 8. It's the percent of third grade students achieving reading standards, and Scott County over since 2015 shows a decline. The state of Minnesota since 2015 shows a decline. So kind of two questions of this. One, how do we compare with national standards on reading? And then two, any ideas on what is happening with reading levels at third grade since 2015 and kind of this area?
Well, I'll jump in as an educator. COVID happened. That is actually we're seeing that in the school district. That affected things tremendously for our families. Just even the world shut down. So these children are at home with their parents. Their parents are going through stressful times, which also resulted stress on children. And, learning and development, I think we saw, we talk about the development of the older children being impacted, but those little ones were very much impacted because the parents were focused on the older ones or their own just capabilities of being able to work and all of those things that were happening. So I think that is, that's not all of it, but, and we're seeing families that are different. Family structures are very different, which they're not good or bad, they're just different. So trying to support those families and the importance of, early literacy and what we need to do. I also feel strongly that social media has impacted greatly our parents are on phones. They're not engaging their children, and that is impacting the way they are learning.
Could I ask a follow-up question to that? So when I was looking at these, and I was glad that Danny brought that question up, and I appreciate your answer. So when I was looking at this, and I kind of looked at some national trends, I mean, this is very consistent across states. But there are some states that have made a very conscious decision to say, we're not going to let these kids go through. We're just not going to pass them through. If they're not achieving this milestone that we think is extremely important for success, we're going to hold them back. We're going to try to figure out each of these kids' deficiencies, what is going on with them, and we're going to create some materials to help them be successful. Have we thought about that within our school districts? I'm a grandma. And when my kids come over, my kids are gone, I make those grandkids sit and read to me. And they're like, Grandma, gosh, I want to be on my phone. But I'm like, nope, while I'm making dinner, you're going to read. But in schools, when they are not achieving success, in our school districts, do they continue to just pass them through? And they continue to have some difficulties as they progress to their academic future?
I'll address that again. I believe that the emphasis a lot of times was on the social emotional development of the child, and there was research done on the impact of holding kids back. And so that research, you see waves in education all the time. I mean, you see it all the time. Whole language, no phonics, all these different things that go back and forth. And that emphasis on they felt, self-esteem of children and fitting in, that social emotional piece, I think overrode that. So there's pressure to move them on. We need to move them on. Now, as you see, the state of Minnesota has passed the READ Act, which all educators in the state are going to be going through specific training on the science of reading, because there's no research, there's more research coming out about the science of reading and that balance of exactly what we need.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And to add one more thing, I think this will be an interesting indicator to keep an eye on, because as you see 2020, 2021, a lot of the third grade students that are being measured on this bar already had foundational reading experience, and the kindergartners, the preschoolers, the first graders that missed that in-person learning opportunity in 2020, that's going to be a trailing indicator, and we'll have to see how long that lasts in that chart trend-wise.
Well, if we want to go to page 9, I have another question maybe, but won't be for you, Mary.
Thanks.
So this is the percentage kindergartners screened at age 3, and I just wanted to highlight, Jordan, Belle Plaine, New Prague all showed overall pretty significant increases in the number of children screened at age 3. I realized New Prague 2022 was a down year, but I'll just attribute that to COVID when anything else goes bad. What did we do? What happened with those communities, and is it replicable with other communities out there? I realize they're smaller, maybe easier to get to, but can you tell a story around that?
I'm in
This
charge
is a
of
good question
screening.
for you, Mary.
I'm in charge of early childhood screening. So it's on, I work directly with screening. I actually do, I do screen children. The emphasis, of course, is on trying to screen at 3 so that we catch, something so that the intervention is sooner. Parents, sometimes the idea, they're scared. So trying to get the information out about, this is no reflection of your parenting. This is just, development. We are here to support. I think sometimes parents will wait because and actually in my marketing, I've actually put down the words, waiting longer doesn't mean they'll do better, because it's all developmentally appropriate to what they're doing. So those stats, our school district, I'm going to tell my school district, because it was part of our World's Best Workforce goal, was to have over 95% of the children screened who are entering kindergarten screened, and last year we had 99%. So we got them. So we're seeing that, and trying to do that earlier intervention. So.
Scott County has also implemented a couple of incentive programs to get parents into the screenings a little bit earlier. So with the family resource centers and the tablet giveaways, there's been some marketing around that. So families that may not have heard of the need for screening otherwise are seeing that. There also have been some programs at the library recently to introduce families and kiddos to the experience of a screening, right? So, you know, here's a ruler on the wall. You'll have to measure how tall you are. Here are some different toys you'll have to play with in a little activity. So I think there are exercises being taken to remove the scariness or the fear around it. In certain communities as well.
Yeah.
We designed that. The county has really worked on messaging towards and has promotional materials towards screening and trying to promote it. So we promote it within our early literacy classes in the libraries. What Lauren was talking about was one of our story stations, which is more of a drop-in, and it provides the same early literacy techniques, but it's not a formal class, so it allows more people who may not have attended a program to see what a library is like. So we actually set up a screening station, which is doing a vision test, measuring your height, and just, you know, like testing, audio testing, which is just like some of those major components, but might seem a little scary. We find if kids have the ability to play and explore within their own, like, as a play experience, it makes them much less scared of a new experience. And it also removes some of that intimidation that parents may feel as well.
I think too, there's barriers that need to be worked on too to remove. I mean, I just know for staffing purposes, we'll try to do Saturday screenings because of course parents can't take off during the week. They don't want to take off. Also multi-language. You need to have screeners or interpreters coming in. I mean, those are some of the, I mean, I think of, hey, why, you know, what are the hard parts? Those are the hard parts to it. And people, it does, I mean, they just don't know. It seems like, you know, a baby is born and they don't know, like, okay, 3 years later, you should do this.
It's not, from my experience, it's not coming from my regular checkups at the doctor's office, right? That would be the touch point I would have expected to hear of it. Sure. I was talking with a couple of my colleagues yesterday about this panel, and they said, why would you screen a kindergartner at age 3, right? And so I think even people who have older kiddos who are already in school have already kind of forgotten the need of that early catch for certain situations.
Well, I think the understanding of what it exactly is just, you know, in early ed, what it really means. Because people will say, oh, they can go to kindergarten now. It's like, well, that's not really what it's about, trying to explain that.
So I will say libraries are very near and dear to my heart. And so I was really, really impressed by all of the different programs that funnel through the library, in addition to all the amazing programs we offer here and through the county and through our partnerships. Of all of those wonderful programs, which one do you feel is the most challenging for people to have access to at the library? And why do you think that is?
Oh, I feel like all of us would have a slightly different answer who work within learning and outreach. I feel we had so much momentum in our early literacy classes prior to COVID. Like even if you look at the statistics, our numbers were huge, and we're slowly redeveloping that. We have staffing hours, but trying to catch everyone with a library program that is designed to provide early literacy tips to the parents and caregivers for them to continue on. That's ultimately the goal of an early literacy class, and making it age appropriate. Right now, Prior Lake Library, I give them complete credit and props. They are doing baby classes, they're doing toddler classes, and they're doing classes specifically for like 3 to 5s. And we do a lot of family classes at our other locations, but that being able to break it down and have a space for not only for kids who are kind of developmentally all at the same level, but it provides parents a connection to other parents who are going through the same thing. And those different age classes, I think that's our biggest challenge, is being able to provide that at all of our locations, and to provide it at times when families are able to attend. Caregivers and their children are able to attend. And so that's always, I feel like, been a struggle. Like, how do we make it accessible, because the messages are so important. This is partially why we started Read and Play. It's been a 5-year passion project of ours, is to bring those early literacy classes to in-home childcare providers, because they may not have transportation. Getting 6 kids to one location at the library at 10:30. I know one provider who does it, and she is amazing. But I've talked to her, and she goes, Sundays it's a struggle, and we're coming in a little late. But to be able to provide those resources to people who are connected with kids on a daily basis, and then also their caregivers, to be able to continue those early literacy practices that we really promote in our classes. So like, just how do we expand that audience? How do we make it age appropriate? Using similar materials, how do we expand our classes that way? I would say that is probably our biggest challenge. And I feel like Lisa and Jen might feel it's a little bit different, but I feel just with the years that we've spent working on this, that is our biggest challenge that we constantly face.
Ellie, can I ask another just access question? So on page 21,
yes,
this looks at the visits to youth-centered programs, and one of the high points in this packet I thought was the increase in the number of kids who are getting to the Readmobile.
Yes.
Can you talk about what is the long-term plan for maximizing the use of that? Because looking at expanding Readmobile access has been a topic of interest for a long time. So what's the plan for that going forward?
Absolutely. So one thing that changed is last summer, the Readmobile took over the Offsite Summer Reading Program, which connects with school district kids company childcare providers during the summer, and also some of the summer schools, summer learning adventures. And using the Readmobile, we actually bring and let kids build a classroom collection of books that they can borrow throughout the summer. They each get to pick a title, then we add a few extras because, you know, everyone's going, no, you don't, you already have one in here. So, but we could put a couple of really popular titles. We put different various levels to try and connect more with kids. We've changed our programming model a little bit. So during the school year, we're often visiting sites where children are, whether it's after school, meeting kids as they get off the bus. A lot of times we see kindergarten through like 3rd, 4th grade, which is really that target audience for trying to provide positive literacy experiences. We realized during the summer when we visit those communities, we aren't seeing the kids as much because they're in childcare or they're staying home or they're told to stay at home, and, you know, not quite as free range children as there were in the past. So what we're doing is we're building collections for those sites, so they'll have books that they can go and visit the office and borrow. The Readmobile is expanding to include more visits to offsite summer reading programs. That was a request we had. And this is a large quantity of kids. This is hundreds of kids in each district that we see. Thousands by the end. It's like 2,100, I believe, we see in the summer. And the more visits we can make, the more impact we can make. So for our larger sites we're doing that are there all summer, we are doing visits 3 times as opposed to twice last year. We didn't figure out how to staff it. We couldn't figure out how to get the vehicle out that often, and also partner with Mikasa Summer Camp and continue doing public visits to try and connect people like, here's a fun way to visit the library. Here's also what your library has to offer, and build that physical connection between a great place to visit, to connect with families. Usually our summer visits are at a park. Going forward, I think the future is we examine every year and to see how the program works, what's working, what isn't, how can we be out there more. This year we have a couple of part-time staff who will be joining us just to provide coverage at Mikasa, we are out like 4 days a week most times during the summer. We are just finishing up the schedule, and that's visiting summer schools, in Jordan we go to the Community Ed Rec Center during their tot time and connect with families there. Just really, we promote screening, kids borrow books, they get snacks, they get an activity to take with them. And we all say this is something you can do at their library. We also promote open access a lot, especially when we're in Jordan, especially when we're in Belle Plaine, because it is such a great resource. I can't wait to start promoting in Savage as well soon.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Lauren, I'm wondering from a board perspective, is there a target or a strategy? Because that is a resource that we are really want to maximize the use of, right?
Yeah, I think that there are specifics still to be worked out. One of the things I was going to mention was, from a visibility perspective, getting out to those community events like a Touch a Truck. I remember my kiddos running in between the school bus and the RV and the Readmobile, right? Like those are the things, and then jumping into a police car or a fire truck or something like that. I, as a member of the Friends of the Library as well, was recently asked to help fund some additional material for the Readmobile to support some of these added activities that they've been discussing. So the site visits will now have leave behind books for every kiddo in those programs in the cities of Savage, Prior Lake, and I believe a handful of others. So we're lightly touching on the metrics. I don't know, Jen, did you have anything else?
Yeah, Chris. Okay.
Okay. Do you want one of ours?
Good morning, Jennifer Schultz, Scott County Library Director. I was just going to add to what Allie and Lauren have already addressed, that one of the initiatives we're working on, starting with our board, and will extend into the community over the next probably 6 to 9 to 12 months, is a community engagement project where we want to get out, have conversations with the community to see additional things that the library could be offering. So I believe that will give us some really rich information to continue to plan for the Readmobile. As Allie indicated, summer obviously is a really high time, but I think doing some additional planning for how we cover the entire year and what that might look like moving forward. So I'm really excited about the community engagement project and to really get that information from our community members, library users, as well as non-library users that can help us for the direction that we're moving forward.
Thanks, Jen.
So, and again, all of those lovely, wonderful programs you guys are running, I noticed you have a newer program, the Newborn Talk program, which looked very exciting to me. Could you tell me a little bit more about how that one is going, since it's a newer program, and what kind of surprised you about this program?
Well, it was actually a passion project of mine for before COVID. I didn't come up with the whole we didn't come up with the whole concept. Northfield actually does that. So why reinvent a wheel, right? So we reached out to Scott County Public Health, and they've been absolutely fabulous partners with this. So the program runs, it's every Wednesday. We try to make it as easy as possible for everybody to remember when it is and remove all the barriers behind it. So there's no registration. It's at 10:45. It is every Wednesday, except we'll be closed for a holiday. Well, how many holidays are on a Wednesday? There's not many. But we also provide free childcare during it, so families, moms, and new babies can attend. And its program goes from birth to about 12 or 16 weeks. We do a rotation of topics each week. And the great part about it is the community involvement. It has been really, truly fabulous. I can't, breaking down silos of different, they were so excited when we approached different areas. Like, for instance, some of our topics, we have, crying, fussing, and coping, a topic, and we have a chiropractor who comes in, and talks about just that type of help. And then also, I should say too, it is structured by a parent and family educator from the New Prague School District. So she's one, our employee, all right, parent and family ed. And then Terry actually comes, and she is the public health nurse. So every single Wednesday, they come, these babies come in, they get weighed, right? You check in on them and make sure everything is going well. And there's, little just check-ins, topics of, just immediate needs, and then it'll go into these topics. And like I said, it's completely free. And the topics, yeah, like chiropractor, we have capable kids involved with tummy time and physical development. We have a doula who comes in and she, focuses on that perinatal mood and anxiety disorders and just all those mental health things that can happen when you have a baby and after. And we have illness in babies and prepping for first cold. We have a pediatrician from, we're Mayo down there, so, we have a Mayo doctor who comes in, and we have attachment and social emotional development, which is our early childhood special education program, helps with that as well. Self-care, woman OBGYN who comes in as well. We have just our own programming, returning to work, playing is learning, talking about the importance of that. And then all these, WIC is involved on feeding and nutrition. Car seat safety, we have a law enforcement who comes in as well. So, gives that face. So we have this, did I miss any?
Probably more.
But it is really, truly, I know, early childhood stuff makes me excited. But this is it's just really exciting to see these families come in who are supported, and the feedback we've received is just phenomenal. So through the, more people involved in it spreads the word more. And then, more people are invested in it. And, we did a public, the paper had come and wanted to do an article. And he's like, well, how much does this cost to run? And I'm like, well, that's really hard. I mean, we have all these professionals who are volunteering their time and they are committed to it. So it's just this wonderful thing that's happening. We have financial investments by the Duck Cup Memorial from New Prague Mental Health. We have Mayo, we have the Smith Foundation, Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation, and of course Scott County, and SHIP has helped us out too. So it's really been great. We've had 34 babies. We just started in September, and we've had 34 babies that have graduated from class. Because they do a little, she makes a little, she's just, Crystal, who runs it, she is absolutely fabulous. I mean, she's an exceptional parent and family educator. She knows the importance of building relationships with families, making it safe, making it, good. And we've already had, like Terry and I were talking about, a really good success story that just happened. And just those wonderful things that happen because you're making a difference.
And I'm guessing that since she's connected to the school system, she helps remind them about the screening.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, we do all of that. And what's great is, many people's their first experience with school is not good. So having it there, we try to, we're at the Early Childhood Center, which is actually the district offices though, and the community center, but the pool is also there. So we're all in this big building. So even just getting to know that the facility itself, making it not a scary place to be, making sure that your first interactions with teachers and public health is a good experience. So that lasts. So yeah.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah.
Cindy, you had some follow-up questions for public health, I think.
I did. So actually on this slide, unbelievable the amount of additional visits that could be accomplished throughout this period of time in a very short order. And I saw on page 18 as well some of the benchmarks that were achieved when you went to see these kids. My question is more on what are the findings of the kids that aren't achieving these? Are we tracking them? Do you have any statistics that say we've gotten so many of these kids that haven't met some threshold? We wrap services around them and we're tracking them. We're tracking them from these visits. They get into the schools. They understand maybe some of the challenges they have and that those teachers and the educational system is prepared to help take them through and maybe design services and programs around them educationally as well. So it's just an amazing amount of visits you guys have done, and kudos to you. But what can you tell me about the kids that have not been achieving these benchmarks, and how do you follow them through the trajectory of success?
Sure, I can address that. We're at the beginning. Part of the reason you see the numbers increase is because we've made some changes in programming and expanded some of the models that allow us to serve more families. So we're just beginning to really deep dive into the data around that and taking a look at at all the implications of that. I would say for kids that aren't achieving those things, I mean, our focus working with them is really about laying the foundation of those healthy relationships that help them be ready to be good learners. They've had exposure to learning opportunities and those kinds of things. If we were to dig specifically into where we don't have as much information about families, it's probably those that are most stressed that sort of fall off, or some families, it's a good thing. They're having opportunities for self-sufficiency, and they're finding housing in other counties, so they're like moving out of the program. We don't have as much information about that along the way. But while we're working with them, we are most certainly identifying any concerns that might be assessed by the home visitor or that the parent expresses, and connecting them to all kinds of supports and connections so that long after they're a part of our programs, they know where they can be supported and connected in the schools, whether it's baby talk groups or ECFE or a referral to Help Me Grow to be assessed and served by the school district for some delays that we know, or if it's a parent that's struggling with substance use disorders and getting them connected to supports so they're able to be an available parent and investing those interactions into kids so that they come as ready learners.
Kind of a similar question, Nikki. What are we learning from the folks at St. David's that are doing some of the prevention work about like those sort of common challenges that are getting in the way of kids attending school, or parents getting their kids to school, I guess?
Yeah, I think we're learning that certainly like mental health and anxiety has been a really strong indicator of why kids aren't attending school. I think that the St. David's program is certainly equipped to work with families on some of those issues, and some of that movement is slow. Like getting a kid on the bus sometimes is like the most difficult part of getting them to school. The one thing I think that's starting to come out is the relationship between St. David's and the schools. Typically when educational neglect would come to Scott County, I think there was like kind of a handoff between the school district and to Scott County, and now that they're really kind of more of a partnership, working together to maintain that relationship with kids and families, and figuring out how we can get kids to school. And I think the prevention piece for St. David's has been huge for school districts, where they can make that referral earlier on, to get to the problem sooner, so that it hasn't been 2 weeks before kids have attended school, and now it's a lot harder to reacclimate into school, and what have you missed learning and all of that, where if it's 2 absences, St. David's can work with the family on how do we get kids back into school.
And you see that as a collaborative more than the handoff that we have traditionally seen in child protection.
Correct. Like I think school districts have said, okay, now it's in the county's hands and they're going to do with it what they do. And I think with St. David's being a community organization, they're working together with families. It's not that handoff. It's like, okay, now how do we work together to get these kids back into school? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask a hard one. On pages 7 and 8, it looks like high school graduation rates are steadily increasing. However, we noticed that the percent of third graders achieving reading standards are steadily decreasing. I'm guessing some folks just look at that high school graduation rate and say, they're still graduating, they're doing better, so what's the deal? I'm betting there's a story behind that disconnect between those 2 slides, and maybe somebody might help enlighten me on that one. I did say it was a hard one.
It is.
So I bet there's a lot to it.
I would say, to fully understand the picture, if we look at our current reading rates, these are the kids that are going to be graduating in 10 years. So we need to go back to like the 2013, 2014. These are the kids that are graduating now. And the reading levels were higher. Whether they're caught up, I don't have the answer to that, but looking at this now, it will be interesting to see the numbers. It's like a 10-year story, and really it's screening. It's an 18-year story for these kids. So you have to look back. The numbers were steadily climbing at this rate, so I can see why the graduation rates did climb. It doesn't tell us what's going to happen in the future. And I'm mildly disheartened, but I'm also optimistic about Mary.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's hard because it is a very long, you're right. I like how it's a long story, it's a long years, and so you don't know those outcomes for a while. You don't know the impacts of what has all happened. And you're seeing research, I'm going back to that social media, if you pay any attention to mental health and social media, I mean, you're seeing that direct response. Now, are we gonna start to see direct responses in graduation? You know, it's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what can be put in place and what has been
Right.
put in place from third grade until graduation to help catch kids up that may not be meeting those standards in third grade.
Well, and school districts they're stressed. They're budget cutting. You know, our interventionalists. I mean, that's another reality. No, that it's not good. I mean, I'm not all here to give you all the good news, but it's hard. They're stressed. It's you know, the financial stress on districts can be really challenging then to make that effect for every kid. I do know, speaking from the education point of view, you know, teachers care. They care a lot. And so, I mean, sometimes it's almost too much. Get too emotionally involved and really want to make that impact. But, you know, they're trying the best that they can do with the resources they have as well. I say that about parents. Parents do the best that they can do with the resources they have. We're also doing the best we can do with the resources we have. So,
Chris, Commissioner Wolf would like to ask a question if you could. Thank you.
So is this all just public school graduation rate on here, or is this everybody, or what? Just because there are private schools out there, and I think they're graduating almost 100%. You know, but those people are in a different category because it's, you know, it's mom and dad are paying some money, and we're going to get our kids educated, and they're going to graduate, and so they're closer to triple figures percentage for graduation, in my opinion, right? So, is that added in here? Do you think, or?
My guess would be not. A lot of times when I'm looking at graphs and different things, but I don't know for sure I don't know, Mary Kay.
My guess, given the source, would be that they are included.
Oh, they are? Okay, sorry.
They are.
Would be
Okay, sorry.
Which from Minnesota Compass, if that's all inclusive.
But if they are, that would imply that the public rates are lower than this, right?
Right.
So if private is averaged in here,
you're
that would
right.
imply that the
That's
public
right.
rates are significantly lower than this.
That's a good observation, yeah. Thank you.
Commissioner, we're going to double check on that, just to make
Right.
sure that we have a clear understanding on that data.
I think that's a great question.
And I had one other thing, is there are some efforts in place, or have been for a while, about looking at some longitudinal data, some data sharing opportunities to be checking in on over time between third grade or earlier and graduation, what other things might be making a difference, or what other contexts have been there. So that's some work that's happening as well.
Well, cohort trends, almost.
Yeah, to some degree, with working through the data sharing at this point, yeah. Modeling after some other counties.
Yeah, so I wanted to shift a little bit to the educational neglect side of this. So looking at page 13, we have educational neglect assessments from 2019 to 2023. We see the decline in the numbers of assessments completed. Just the explanation for why we have that decline.
So I will say that, like, some of that natural decline recently has been, I mean, certainly I think there was some COVID decline. But we took some of those educational neglect assessments as child welfare. Our PSAP worker, Parent Support Outreach Program, helped assess some of those educational neglect reports during COVID when schools closed down and some of those issues. And then we have contracted with St. David's for our educational neglect prevention and diversion program. So really we are trying to refer all of the families that we get to that St. David's community program, and are only taking the educational neglect reports that are also other child protection issues for assessments.
Actually leads to my next series of questions. So we can go to page 14, and kind of the questions are the same for 14 and 15. So I see for 2022 to 2023, we have complete data, and we only have to February for 23 to 24. But it looks like there's a pretty significant increase in the number of referrals near the end of that year. Do we track when the referrals are coming during the course of the year, and then try and adjust our programming and outreach to try and target, hey, these are critical times where we start to see an increase in educational neglect or referrals, to make sure that there's more awareness or programming around there?
We do. We've done a lot of education work with schools around like the program, the St. David's program. We certainly see a rise around the holiday time, like before Christmas or holiday break. Schools typically have a little bit higher reporting during that time before they go on break. They want to get kids in a prevention program or a diversion program to get those kids served. And then we also see the springtime is typically a pretty high referral for educational neglect. April is typically our highest month for schools making reports. I think the prevention piece of the program has slowed that down a bit, that schools can make those prevention referrals earlier. I do, and I think this is where, I wonder about the data from even last year where it's been on a decline. Is that because schools have a little bit stronger partnership with families and they're doing some more of that work up front rather than making the referrals to the prevention program or the diversion program because they've seen, I think, some of that benefit of partnering with families before handing them off and making the report.
Is April because of MCAs?
I think April's because after the spring break period, schools are starting to see the end of the school year, and then they're wanting to make sure that they get children connected.
I thought maybe kids were afraid of the MCAs and didn't want to go to school. Like the stress, of all that?
No, we haven't typically seen less attendance during that time. We've just seen a higher reporting period because I think schools have worked all along to try and get kids back into school, and it maybe hasn't been successful. So we might see reports in April for absences that happened in January and February, and they just really haven't been able to engage families to come back in. Not necessarily like less attendance during those times.
I'm looking at two different slides. One of them was on slide 11, which is your Scott County births. And, there's been a decline in births, but then, a couple of years of decline, goes back up. But when I look at following on page 19, which is your follow-along program, from 2019, there's been a straight decline. So I would have thought that, okay, births are going down, so the program enrollees would go down as well, but yet they're not. Can you talk to us a little bit about how births can still rise in 21 and 22 and stays fairly stable, but yet we still continue to see the decline in the follow-along program? What are parents and or your enrollees or people who aren't enrolling? Do you have any idea what is causing this difference?
I can address. Can you hear me now? I can just talk a little bit about that. The birth rate has been going down significantly, actually, especially between like 2016, where we had almost 1,900 births, to more recently we're under 1,500. Also, at the same time, Scott County population has increased. So overall, our county's population is aging, even though we are a younger county. So we are getting less births per capita that I would have expected. The birth rate is also strongly impacted by the economy, and we did see a decline during COVID. However, with that, we would expect follow-along enrollment to go down because there's less babies, a lot less babies, particularly in 2023, and that's overall, we get a lot of our follow-along population is in the new births. With the births also, and I'll turn it over to Ruth in a second, we have, in a positive way, we have seen a much lower percentage of low birth weight babies than we have previously. We've seen a decline, a huge decline, thankfully, in teen birth rates, and an increase in adequate prenatal care during birth. So those three things alone, people will see have a lot less concerns. Also, another thing to remember is follow-along is only one way that babies get screened, and this is really important to know. So follow-along has that 0 to 3, and they get assessed for developmental delay. Are they playing, talking, developing appropriately? We also have we're getting screened being done by family home visiting, and we've seen an increase in family home visiting as well. So those kids are also getting assessed if they're playing and developing appropriately. as well as the newborn checks and pediatricians. And a lot of the referrals from Help Me Grow, whether they're in follow along or not, are coming from public health and pediatricians. So even though follow along numbers might be going down, kids still have quite a few ways, especially before that 3.5 age where they're getting screened at the early childhood screening. There's multiple ways, and we've been a lot more involved in ensuring that kids are getting appropriately screened.
Thank you, Lisa. I just want to add one more thing. I'm Ruth Highland. I coordinate the Follow Along program. And so around 2019 to 2020, we had some staff changeover, and we actually kind of changed some things with how we were enrolling families in the Follow Along program. So specifically in our family home visiting program, we used to enroll all of those families in the Follow Along program. So that was counted in the data earlier on, like 2016, 2019. And so we just found that a lot of that was duplicative because the home visitors were doing the questionnaires and then the follow-up. So we, just because time and trying to maximize our staff time and things, we stopped doing that. So that does account for some of the drop, which that the graph doesn't state that. But I also want to just draw your attention to the yellow bars, the referrals. So as you can see, those are higher than ever. So those are, so I feel really confident that we are connecting with the kids we need to connect with, because those are early intervention referrals. So we're connecting them to, through the Help Me Grow system, to the early intervention with the schools, private OT, PT, speech therapy, things like that. And we do a lot of, really starting in the 2-year mailings, 2.5 years to 3 when they graduate, we do a lot of education on early childhood screening, how to locate your school district. We can help with a warm handoff and connecting them to those appointments, especially with those kids that are trailing on the monitor to failing. So, yeah.
Thank you.
As a parent who has 2 kiddos in that program, I would say that there is an opportunity to, again, communicate the value proposition of the program, because it takes a decent amount of time to fill out those packets every month, and they are not digital, and you have to put them in the mail. And for 2 kiddos who have been developing pretty on track, I would say the feedback that I have personally received hasn't needed to jump into intervention. So for me, it's harder to justify the time it takes to fill it out, but I can see where those referral incidents would be really beneficial to have that connection.
Yeah, and I'll add to in the next couple years, we should be getting more funding from the state, and they're right now really working on moving the program to online, so it will be a lot easier to complete by phone. We'll always still offer paper for those that need it, but then we're really doing a lot of work right now on just reaching all populations, so all cultures, all languages, things like that, that we just haven't had the resources for. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of growth and follow along, really positive growth in the next few years. So.
Thank you. If I could just add to what Ruth and Lisa have said. So we have all these opportunities really early. If a child is at birth identified with a condition that would put them at risk for developmental delays, there would be an automatic referral for services or evaluation through, again, that central intake point that we have as a state to Help Me Grow, that then trickles down to the school districts to offer early intervention services, or a medical or occupational therapy referral from the providers. Then we have the universal approach of inviting all families born into the follow-along program, where parents opt in to fill out those questionnaires. And then there's been a lot of work in recent years around standardizing those assessments of kids with tools like the ASQs and ASQSEs, the social, emotional, and developmental screening tools, so that everybody's using standardized practices to take a look at kids and when they might need additional services, whether, like Lisa said, it's at their well checks or it's us during home visiting. It's a required part of our models. We as a public health department, we are a mandated partner in child find activity to be sure we're identifying kids early and getting them connected to help and supports as early as possible. Early is always better. So,
thank you. I have one last question before we turn it back to the commissioners. One of our hopes in pulling together these Scott County Delivers conversations is that people, in the course of preparing for them, identify opportunities to do things differently. And so I'm just wondering if there are one or two of you, like, did anybody learn anything in the course of talking to each other that identified a gap in access or a place where we could make services more accessible to kids? Did you learn anything from putting this together?
I can start really quickly. The program that you, Mary, was describing, I think would be a really great fit for the Family Resource Center, or something similar to it. I think one of the issues that the Family Resource Center has generally had is getting out to the community. They've got a really good returning cycle, but I think they have historically still struggled to grab new folks, and I think that would be an interesting program to connect with a certain population. I also think that there is value in the regularly scheduled programming. I think that is something that I have personally struggled with, trying to get into a class, right? The fact that you can see a schedule out in advance, that there's a plan and you can drop in, I think that would be a really great fit. So I think opportunity-wise, I'd love to see something like that.
Thank you
Come to Shakopee.
Appreciate that.
Just a nugget I was going to share earlier, but we are also engaged in a similar newborn talk project with the Shakopee district. That's been going also since fall, and we've had a request now from Prior Lake Shakopee. So the communities are asking for these things too, and in addition to what you're saying, I think we're seeing a growth across the community, a little bit more accessible when it's out and about as well. So we're excited about that.
I just want to share being in the program. The program is only supposed to go through 12 weeks, and it was the families that asked if they could keep going to run through the topics and to receive the support and connections.
Yeah, they asked for it because but that just shows you what the need is. Like, they find it so valuable. So.
Thank you so much. Madam Chair, I will hand it back to you.
Wonderful, thank you. Since my time on the board, this has been just a ever increasing topic, because we know, and I think I talk with community members often who are like, you're the Scott County Board, you're supposed to plow roads. Why do you really care about babies through 3-year-olds and young children and young families? And I think that it relates so much to all we do. And I think it relates so much to, I tell people all the time, we want to work ourselves out of a job. I'd love to have nobody in jail and nobody in child protection and nobody having mental health crises, because we could all save lives and save taxpayer money. And we've learned, research has shown, this is where it starts, supporting young children and families. So thank you. Just a reminder, I think, to all of us, why do we care about this again? Oh yeah, it's probably the most important. So I have some comments, but I'll start with my other colleagues who would like to go first.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Commissioner Brennan.
I agree with that. This really feels like a part two to the conversation that we had last month on child welfare. So it's good to see that things are happening. I had gone on a outing with the family.
Home visiting.
Home visiting, there you go. And the amazing work that they're doing to get out information and still work with the families on their issues that they need to deal with. And so I appreciate that. I also want to point out that Lauren is here as a parent and as a volunteer to our community. And I really appreciate the work that she's done on the library board and coming here and realizing that children are a great asset to our community. So thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before I go to Commissioner Wolf, I just want to add on to that. I was saving it, but since we're on the topic of Lauren, I just
the topic of Lauren.
I would like to give a very, very public thank you to you for your years of service on the Scott County Library Board. You've been on since January of 2020, and you're leaving us and moving. And even more impressive about her presence here today is she is like literally in the middle of moving and heading to Chicago soon for a house inspection. So, but yet she prioritized being here. So thank you for your service. Your new community is going to be lucky to have you doing the same thing there, I'm sure. So thank you very much.
Okay, wait. I need to jump on that train.
Okay. Yeah.
Wait, moving? Moving? I was just going to say, ERs right down the hall, applications, and applications are available digitally. There was a issue
There you go. Yep.
But apparently, I don't know if it's too late.
She'll be back.
Okay, all right. I'll have more to say, but I'll defer back.
Commissioner Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just was going to say, and I think Ally touched on it the most, you're the library person. I think the libraries are a great answer to a lot of this stuff. I had 4 boys, and there's a couple other ladies in here with 4 boys, and I could put my whistle and my striped shirt away and bring them to the library. And, you know, just everybody, we're reading for an hour. And I mean, that helps. And I can't remember how much it cost me to get in for each of them. I think I had a season pass, but I think it was free. You know, it's like, it's all there for free. And, you know, I've even talked that some of the libraries, we have schools, the high school, the middle, the, you know, early schools. Maybe if somehow we could open those up and make bigger libraries or something. I see Jen, I don't know. But, you know, just where the public could go to those libraries. You know, we've got all these little libraries all over cities, and look at Savage. How many schools have they got in Savage? 3? 7 schools.
Elementaries.
And they've all got libraries, you know. So I don't know. Somewhere there's an answer, but boy, it's just, there's lots of resources out there. There's almost no excuse to not be able to, in my opinion. And I see, and Janet Williams, she was the former library director at one point, and I don't know if I see Jake here. Jake's here. So libraries, you know, I think there's a lot of answers that could be found there for reading and a lot of stuff. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think we know what he's going to do in his next chapter. See what I did there?
Is he on
Next
the
chapter?
volunteer list for libraries?
I don't know.
He should be volunteering
I
at
don't
the
know. Maybe.
library.
Maybe. Okay. So one of my questions, this is kind of a recurring theme. One of my questions is always, what are we on your page 8? The 3rd grade reading level standard. Is that the gold standard? Have we arrived at that? Or is it a standard? Is it a barometer? Like, is it the thing?
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is the thing. The research behind it shows typically student successes, which is, yeah, you know, learning to read up to 3rd grade, you're reading to learn after 3rd grade.
So Commissioner, we've heard that from New Prague, we've heard it from Shakopee, we've heard it from Prior Lake. The next time we're talking about this, you will see a graph of 2021 grad rates with like 2011 3rd grade reading with 2006 screening percents. And that's the thing we're missing. I think that Mary was trying to hit on. It's hard to see it here because it's over that 18-year span.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you start to see the trends. And we need to get that put into a diagram for you. We've been struggling to get a little bit of it back in history, but we will get there.
Well, and that is super helpful because I don't know if we're doubling down on it, but we're definitely doubling down on it with some of our relationships with the schools. I know data sharing is sometimes an issue, which I think was listed as a kind of a still work in progress, but hopefully that's getting better. Maybe, maybe not. Looking out at so that we can get this information, because if it's just a barometer, I mean, I know, you know, there's all kinds of lights and gauges on our dashboard, but is this the thing that actually helps intervene when we can?
Can I respond to that, Commissioner? I think
Please.
one of the things that we learned, like through the conversation, some of the conversations we've had with school district, specifically Shakopee, is that they do really hold that as a significant marker. That our question was, are we paying attention to the right thing? And the answer was unequivocally yes. I think what we learned through the research that we did during that project was that 2 things, reading at 3rd grade and poverty, are the 2 pieces that come together. And so when we talk to really those are the 2 things that are most predictive of academic success. And so when we bring these conversations together, having people who are part of meeting those basic needs, the FRCs and the prevention teams, that's why they're really integral to these conversations, because it's those 2 markers that are going to tell you something about that predictive.
And if I could add, you know, the research behind, I think about the reading and the science of reading and what the vocabulary children need to hear, the engagement that they need to have with their parents or their child caregiver, you know, whoever is caregiving them. And it's kind of scary because of screens, because parents are engaged in this and they are not talking to their children. And that is going to be impactful, because we know that children hear this many, I can't remember the exact number of words, their vocabulary building, my librarians help me, that, you need to hear this many words and then that will help this. I mean, there's even research behind family mealtime, that families that sit down and have a meal together, those students or those children do better in school. Go ahead.
And we know in poverty, there's a lot of stress on the family.
Yes.
And just like that service dog reduces stress and then you can engage, when there's stress on the families, to be able to be perceptive and see what the child needs and respond to that, it makes it really hard. And so it's not only the media, it's that stress of poverty that impacts that early attachment by 12 months, which is supportive of social and emotional development, which is supportive of learning and cognitive skills.
And do we talk about simple things as family meals together? Is that something that we talk about? And I know meals look differently, but as you bring that up, I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I always say that I think there should be campaigns against, remember in the Reagan years where, here's your brain on,
I do.
The egg and the frying. And, I think that there should be like campaigns on like early reading and the impact you have on your child and the full development. Because the research is there. People don't know it, or they don't see it, or they don't know. They need to be reminded again and again.
I'd like to tie in just because we do a lot with early literacy. And so the reason why we emphasize picture books is they have 3 times as many rare words. And that idea of repetition is so important. Like, you need to hear a word over and over and over again in order to understand what it is. So the more exposure you have, so our early literacy practices is based on every child ready to read. It's ready to read. It's not every child reading, because we don't want you reading at 3. But it's to give parents the tools that they need. And one of those skills, which I think is so important, is talking. And we talk about striving for 5 back and forth interactions with kids, because it helps develop, when you speak and you learn how to listen, you're using every single part of your brain, and that takes development. We talk about this with everyone who goes through Every Child Ready to Read training. So every child care provider that goes through our training, they get to see brain models and MRI scans. But it takes like seconds for kids to hear a question, process it, and come up with a response. And as they get that practice, as they practice talking, they get to develop those skills. And I think that is one of those things that just one of the things the library emphasizes is not just reading, playing, singing, and writing, but also talking. And just encouraging parents to talk to their kids, whether it's at the table, at bedtime, at the grocery store, which is chaotic but wonderful. It's the best place to ever talk to a child. Yeah.
But I think Teresa tried to touch on it a bit too, is that when families are in poverty and they're worried about where they're going to sleep or how they're going to eat a meal, it's more difficult to just talk to your child or to sit down and have that meal, because there's so many other things swirling around in your mind that you can't really concentrate on that one thing.
We have a lot of efforts and tools like that, I think, that we all use to help families understand that, or to have moments of joy that facilitate that connection, those kind of things, all so foundational to their future relationships, their ability to learn, that kind of a thing. I do want to say, because I know if I don't, Lisa will jump up and say it, but there have been some campaigns actually about the importance of things like family meals. We have talk tins. If anybody sees a place that we could share talk tins, they're just nice tins that have conversation starters for families. And we share them out in the community, and all those things are important. It's just not broadly known. I think we often hear from families, like what Lauren said was, how do we not know about these things? These services, these activities are really great. And why didn't we know? I wish I'd have known, especially if they weren't a parent's own experiences. There's always an opportunity then for change.
Commissioner Ulrich, any comments?
Well, I applaud the county's efforts, and I know that education is not a primary responsibility of the county, that we are support to all the educational system and these efforts you're making. I've been here a long time on this board, and it seems like my entire time on the board we've been talking about reading levels at 3rd grade. what I feel like we got a table with at least one leg missing, maybe two legs missing, and that is, what are the school districts doing differently in regard to this situation? I would want to hear more. What have you scoured the country, or have you scoured other countries, innovative practices? What's being done differently? Some school districts are doubling the amount of time they spend on reading. Now, I understand, I've dug a little deeper with some experts on that, and they said if you just double exactly what you're doing, you don't change and use that other half what you're doubling in a different way, using different strategies, it's probably not going to have a payoff. And then some school districts are not advancing kids that, because of the reading issue, and then I understand that the trauma of not being advanced is pretty severe, so I don't know the answers, but I guess I don't know if we can challenge the school districts, in a conversation. What innovation, what are you doing dramatically different? And I haven't, over the years, I haven't really heard that. And so I applaud our efforts, but I think there's another part of the equation that we have to really push on.
Thank you for that. Well, wonderful. Thank you all for the time today. Obviously, a passionate discussion. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to everybody, but especially Lauren for your service, Mary for your whole career dedicated to this and coming here from New Prague to share what's going on. So great. Glad to hear about the Newborn Talk success, and I know it's in Shakopee, and we're going to get that in more places. So thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you.